I'm Jackie Doucette, and I'm on a mission to discover exactly what life is like beyond retirement. Join me while I chat with people who've already done it, who've retired to something rather than from something. Let's find out together exactly what's waiting for us when we say goodbye to that 9-to-5. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Retirement. Today, it's my pleasure to be joined by Dawn Fleming. And Dawn has literally been there and done that. And now she's living her best life. After working in real estate, in international law, and as a mentor to thousands of entrepreneurs, Dawn and her husband now own and operate Overseas Life Redesign, a global coaching and consulting company that encourages others to discover their dreams and turn them into reality, just like she did. She also hosts a podcast that shares success stories of international retirement, as well as advice for listeners seeking to leave their comfort zone and experience life abroad. Dawn, thanks for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, as I always do, can you talk a little bit just about your history, how you got where you are? You probably didn't start out planning to live this wonderful life, but it's great that you've got it now.
No, well, I had to plan for a different life back in my late 20s. I moved from Minnesota to Southern California with my first husband, who was a doctor. And then after being there for a few years, he surprised me with a divorce. So I had to sort of reset. And in a moment of insanity, I decided to leave my real estate career and go to law school. And I did well as an attorney. I practiced for about 7 years, landed a dream job practicing international law, thought that was the path that I was going to be on. And then I decided that it just really was never going to allow me to live the life that I wanted to. I certainly wouldn't be living this lifestyle as an attorney. And so I just, decided that there were other things that I could do, and I ended up in the network marketing industry for a couple of decades. I loved that. It gave me the ability to coach and mentor and train entrepreneurs without worrying about charging them $300 an hour to do it. The business model of the legal profession just wasn't good. So I really enjoyed that. And actually, the first company I was with, I still get paid today. So I discovered this thing called residual income that has been fabulous. And I think once you've had that, like, you never go back. You're right. And so we had decided the 2008 crash happened. My second husband, I met about 10 years after my divorce. I kissed lots of frogs and finally found my prince. And so we got married in the British Virgin Islands. I was number 3 for him. He was number 2 for me. We didn't want a big wedding or anything of that nature. So we chartered a sailboat for 16 days in the British Virgin Islands, traveled all around in paradise, and then had a wake-up call when we returned to Southern California and realized we were living in the concrete jungle, and we're like, what are we doing? This is, and I just stayed there because I wasn't going back to the frozen tundra, and he didn't really have anything keeping him there. So we just started a conversation. Well, if you could live anywhere, where would you live? And he liked the panhandle of Florida, the beautiful white sand beaches up in Destin. And so we went there, I checked it out, and I said, yeah, I could see this. But it took us until 2010 before we finally left because, like I said, the crash happened. He lost his business. I lost my business. Another one of those events out of left field that just really kind of upset the apple cart. And we hung on for 2 years until finally 2010, we said, we just got to go. We can't live our life according to real estate. We took off, sailed 5,000 miles, went to Florida, tried that out for 6 years, 2 in the Panhandle and then 4 in South Florida. And it just wasn't our cup of tea. It just wasn't a good fit culturally for us. And we were ready to buy something. I didn't want to buy a big house, oceanfront house with taxes and all that. I said, if we're going to buy something, let's put money in our pocket. And so we came down to this little Caribbean islands, Isla Mujeres, that I'd been coming to since the 1990s, early 1990s. We'd looked at real estate many times while we had visited here. and finally decided, let's go ahead and buy an income producing property. And so we did that, not really intending to move, but then after coming down frequently with the house and everything, in August here is actually better than Florida. You have nice sea breezes and cooler water. So we said, we can live anywhere. Let's try it. We jumped on the sailboat and came down, sold all of our belongings, and thought, well, we'll try it. If it doesn't work out, we can always go somewhere else. And we just stayed, and here it is 5 years later. Time flies when you're having fun.
Wow, that's amazing. And as you say, if you don't like it, you can just hop on your sailboat and go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So I was reading your book, Claim Your Dream Life. And as you know, planning for retirement, or more correctly, for your life beyond retirement, is something that's increasingly important for people. And in the first few pages of your book, you talk about the changes that have happened in the past 100 years, including the fact that we've basically been given another adult life added onto our life because of the increase in life expectancy. It's a great gift, but it's got a huge price tag along with it. The cost of living's gone up. People are outliving any retirement income that they've got. It's harder to find a job that gives you a pension, or to stay at one long enough to get a pension. So getting your dream life, I guess, is still possible, but there are some things that you have to do that have to happen. You have to do the work if you want to reap the rewards. So can you talk about the questions that people should ask themselves, the things that they should be thinking about before they take the first step to claim or to get their dream life?
Well, the one thing that I noticed, because I did workshops for a year for folks and conducted this, real time with people and got their feedback. And, one thing I think needs to happen that I used to put in the workshops and really say, you got to know where you're at financially. And there's really a lack of financial education. I'm sure you're aware of that, particularly in the United States. But too many people just don't really know where they're at financially. They don't really have when you run a business, you're used to doing a P&L and balance sheet, right? You know what your income is, you know what your expenses are, you know whether you made a profit at the end of the year. And it's too easy, I think, for us to just, money comes in, money goes out, and you don't really track it and all of that. And I think that's really the first part is really knowing where you're at. Don't be afraid to say, oh, maybe I'm living beyond my means, and take a really hard look at, what am I paying for every single month? What value am I getting out of it? So understanding where you're at, and then understanding where you want to go, right? I use the analogy in the book, like we used to sail to Catalina from LA. If we wanted to go to Catalina, we exit the harbor, we set a course, and that's where we go. We don't set a course, we don't go to Catalina. We go maybe on the rocks, maybe we go to Hawaii, maybe we go to Mexico. Like you can't just go out in the ocean and drift. You will end up somewhere, but it may not be where you want to go. And I think that's a good analogy for life, is if you want to go to a particular destination, you've got to set the course to get there. And so that's part of the hard work, is what's your destination? And that is both physical, but it's also the mental, emotional, the sense of purpose. And that actually, if you look at the studies, is more important than the geographic location, right? That's the easy part, picking a geographic location. You can say, okay, well, I have limited resources, so I need to go in an inexpensive location. And so you look there. But more importantly, like, what are you actually going to do with yourself? How are you going to spend your days? Otherwise, nobody has boredom on their bucket list, I doubt. But that can happen.
Very easily, I think. And so when people come to you and they say, okay, I want to go somewhere, and I want to go because I don't like it here. What do you say to them? What do you tell them at that point?
Well,
I just don't like it here.
I do address that in Claim Your Dream Life. It's okay to be running away from something, like, in Southern California, we were running away from the concrete jungle and the high cost of living and how crowded it was. But we were also running to something else. So you have to. I talk about in Claim Your Dream Life, wherever you go, there you are. So if you're not happy where you're at, just strictly, changing geographic locations is unlikely to make you happy. So you really got to dig deep and say, okay, why am I not happy in my physical location?
And how do you help people, maybe decide is the wrong word, but how do you help people decide where it is they'd like to go? Obviously, you're not going to say, oh, you need to go to the Caribbean or you need to go to the mountains. You're going to let them decide that. But what kind of questions do you ask, or do you tell people to think about?
Yeah. And I think, the way that I was introduced to this whole idea, which a lot of people have, is, a subscription to International Living magazine. That's how it all started for me, right? And it does for a lot of people. And it's a wonderful resource. And it really, it's filled with great stories. But at the same time, it is a bit of, sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. And they don't really get into the downside a whole lot. And I understand why, it's not very sexy to market that. But at the same time, I actually go through in chapter 3, there's a whole list, I believe there's like 9 criteria in there, but things like, what do you like to do? Do you want to enjoy the theater and nightlife and, activities? Or if that's the case, you're not going to be happy in a sleepy beach village, right? And so climate. What kind of climate? If you like the snow and mountains, you're not going to be happy on a Caribbean island. So there's a whole list of factors. Those are the externals, largely, right? That the outside things that you're looking at. But then, the deeper work is the inside stuff in terms of what are you passionate about? What, where do you want to spend your time and energy and talents? If you need to earn income, then that's a consideration as well. That's going to be more of an internal factor than just, there's a list of the top 10 places to retire, so you need to go there. Well, I don't think that's the best way to make that sort of a choice.
So when you help people, when they come to your website or come to you for help with their decisions, you're dealing with them more as who they are, not where they want to go? Is that?
Well, it's both. It's both. Because really it's the internal that drives the external, right? It's the analogy I also like to use is when I was an attorney, I used to help new businesses get started, right? And I would help set up their corporations and their contracts and get everything in place for them to be able to operate legally and easily. And they used to be surprised sometimes. I would say, well, what's your exit strategy? And they go, exit strategy? What do you mean exit strategy? I'm just starting this business. I said, precisely. And that's why we need to know what your exit strategy is. Are you building a legacy business that you're planning on leaving to your children if they want it? Are you looking to build it up and sell it in a couple of years? Do you have partners or other shareholders that are interested? Do you know what their exit strategy is? Do they want to cash out their, you know what I mean? And because if you don't do that, if you don't look at that end result, it's very difficult for you to make decisions on an ongoing basis. And I think the same is true. And it also, so it sort of becomes a yardstick measuring whether or not this fits into your plan. And as an example, when I left my first network marketing company in California, I knew I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. And I worked with a mentor, and he helped me go through what I call the freedom formula in Claim Your Dream Life, which is basically making a list of your passions and skills and then lining them up to figure out what sort of work you want to do. And so I did that exercise. we left California, we sailed around, we got to Florida. I was fast and furiously working on a new business venture that was, kind of my own thing, helping entrepreneurs. And out of the blue came a business opportunity with another network marketing, a startup that a lot of my friends from the previous company were going to. Well, I had my list of skills and passions that I had done, and that became my compass. So when this business opportunity came along, I could look at that and go, does this new opportunity fit into what I've identified as my top skills and passions? And as a matter of fact, it did. Some of them are meeting new people, networking, speaking, coaching, training. Those were all at the top of my list. And so this new opportunity that had come along was doing all of those things that I had previously identified. So I just moved that other thing to the back burner. I said, I'll work on that later, maybe. And actually, a lot of the content that I created back then has come into this business. So, a lot of it's timeless, especially business information. And so if you can do that, then like I said, that really becomes your compass, that you can look at things that come your way, because they will. Opportunities will come your way if you're out there and exploring and meeting new people and all of that.
So do you help people make the transition to wherever their new location is? Moving internationally is something that a lot of people are going to find very daunting. The taking up a residency somewhere, getting either temporary or permanent residency status, that kind of thing. Do you help them with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I don't work as a lawyer to do the
No.
immigration things and things like that. But of course, helping them locate the resources to be able to do all of the things that need to be done. Absolutely. And as I build out the opats.com website, that will become a major resource center for a lot of these ancillary services that I personally don't get involved in. But at this stage of time, what we're really focusing on is helping people really understand one of the biggest questions I get is, where do I start? Like, I have this idea, I have this dream, and I don't even have a clue where to start. And that was really the reason I wrote Claim Your Dream Life. It is my workshop in published written form. So it allows people to go through that process with guidance, and there's lots of exercises in there and worksheets and all of that. And then the process going, okay, well, all right, now I have an idea of what I want. Now, what are the next steps? And really what I've found is there's kind of 3 phases to it, depending on where you're at in the process and how much time you have. If you're still working full-time in a job, then obviously you're not probably going to be able to take a year sabbatical, right, to go try a place to that extreme, but you can vacation with a purpose. Right. And that means identifying locations that are possibilities. Take a vacation there. Don't stay at a 5-star resort. Get an Airbnb in a local neighborhood. Talk to the locals. Try to find some other expats that are there. Ask them questions. Interview. Figure out how much does it cost. Go grocery shopping. Do a lot of the things that you would do if you were living there, as opposed to just vacationing, laying on the beach. The second one is the beta test. And I'm really excited. I haven't really told too many people about this, Jackie, but that's actually the next iteration of the workshop, is going to be a one-day workshop, a free workshop on how to do a beta test. Like, and there's you can't fail. That's the thing of beauty about a beta test. So that is where you take a longer period of time, maybe a month, 6 weeks, 2 months, if you can spare it, to literally go rent an apartment. Most places are month to month. It's not necessarily long-term leases. You can go and get an apartment for a month for probably what you would normally spend for a week vacation in a vacation rental, and be able to live like a local, try it out. My friend Diane, she went and rented a car because she knew she wanted to have a car. And so where am I going to park? And, all of the things like that. So that again is really 2 pieces of it. It's the externals, figuring out, okay, where am I going to go to do this? And then the internals, what's important to me personally that I need to have there in terms of community and culture and language and all of these sorts of things. And then finally is, if you can do it, the ultimate beta test, actually I just interviewed a gal from my podcast who actually rented an apartment for a whole year.
Wow.
She didn't move down. She knew she was going to be a snowbird, or not a snowbird, but really just wanted a vacation rental for income while she was getting ready for retirement. But before she bought a place, she rented an apartment. What is it like to have property that I'm responsible for? And then she could come down, not far from Atlanta, easy flight, 2 hours, and you're with a time change, it's an hour, and basically in an hour and 40 minutes, you're on the beach, almost 2 hours. And she would rent it out to friends and family when she couldn't come down. So she was trying out. So I thought, I'm going to incorporate that into the beta test training. So what a great way, risk-free, to see what it's like to be a property owner. Because the reality of it is, down here in Mexico, you don't just call the landlord whenever anything breaks. Like, you're kind of expected to fix stuff on your own. Like, that's normal. And you sometimes will find that. You go overseas and the rules aren't always the same, like they're not going to just send over the maintenance guy to fix stuff. You're going to have to find resources on your own. So that's also kind of leads into the next question, the cultural differences, the adaptations that you have to make. Can you talk a little bit about, do you have any stories about people who have had to adapt to different things, or maybe yourself in moving to different places? Well, yeah. I mean, the bottom line is there will be culture shock. Like, I don't care who you are, right? That's just something that is to be expected. Even here. I mean, I've traveled here many, many, many times over the last, 30 years. I've been coming to this little island, but it's not the same as living here. Yeah. It just isn't. And until you get immersed into a place, you don't even know what it's going to be, right? So you have to be ready, sort of the resiliency to understand that. And from my research, I didn't really see it too much. And of course I'm part of a couple. I have my husband and I. If you're single, maybe a little bit more, but certainly some of the single gals and guys that I've talked to, somewhere around 3 to 6 months. There's a little bit of a dip, a little bit of a depression. You call it homesickness or something, where you start to question and you're like, did I do the right thing? What was I thinking? And then it seems like by month 6, it's sort of passed. But, to kind of know that going in that, you might go through that phase and where you're questioning, and that's okay. It's normal, and everybody's different. And I've learned that I got certified in an expat coaching program last summer. And that was something that I learned in that program is everybody adapts differently. Like no one's transition is identical. And so you can't really compare yourself to someone else. Like I've moved quite a bit in the United States first. So I became very skilled at learning how to navigate a new place. How do you find doctors and dentists and chiropractors and hairdressers and veterinarians and all of these things? Chamber of Commerce, hint, right? Those people are business people. They know who's good. So you can find the same information if there's no Chamber of Commerce, but that's just a really easy way to do that. And it's also a great way to meet people and you become adept. You really build that muscle of being able to establish new friendships and relationships. And so it just gets better with practice, I think.
And I guess something that you always have to keep in mind is that any move that you make doesn't have to be forever. If you decide you don't like it, you can change. It's not that you failed, you've just moved on.
That's exactly right, Jackie. I'm glad you said that. One of my favorite sayings is, we are not trees. We have no obligation to grow where we are planted. We do have the ability to move. And in the beta testing, for sure, like I said, there's no right or wrong. The question is yes or no. Is it a fit or is it not a fit? That's all you're after is certainty about that. If it's not a fit, then you move on. Okay, this isn't the right place. Let's move on to the next place. And so that's the purpose of the beta test. It gives you an opportunity to test the waters before you take the big plunge. And even if you go somewhere and you decide, like when we came down, oh no, we want to go somewhere else, it's okay. I talk about the Goldilocks method in Claim Your Dream Life. My friend Barbara Harris, I think I lost count, but they moved like 8 times within Mexico. At first they tried, Puerto Morales, and then they tried Progreso, and then they said, oh no, we're from BC, we missed the mountains, let's go over to the other side, Puerto Vallarta, and different places before really finding. And I think they lived 4 or 5 different places in Puerto Vallarta before they finally settled into a place. But she did say she was a gypsy, so.
And I guess with your beta test or with your vacation with a purpose, it'd be important to try different seasons, assuming that there are different seasons where you're thinking of going, because you might like the heat, but maybe not the bugs, or
Yes.
something like that.
Good point. Absolutely. Even here, it's January is very different from August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your website, opats.com. Can you talk a little bit about how opats came about?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So I had this conversation with a business coach that I started working with last year, and I was explaining to him that I discovered that the word expat actually has a very negative connotation to it, and a lot of it, and there's a video that explains it in detail, but basically, what's the difference between an expat and an immigrant? Right? It's and I found out the sort of the origin of expat. It was a diplomatic status. It was basically for corporate people who were working in a country for a specific length of time. So it doesn't really address folks like us that have elected to leave their home country for an open-ended period of time. Like, there's not the intention to return after a set period of time. And so, and besides, who wants to be an ex anything, right? It just doesn't sound good. And to expatriate means to actually give up your own citizenship, which is certainly not what we're doing. So he said, actually, this gentleman I was talking with said, well, what about overseas pats? Overseas patriots, right? And I thought, oh, that is, and it of course resonated with my brand, the Overseas Life Redesign brand. And he said, see if that website, if that domain is available. And it wasn't, but I was able to purchase it at a good price. And so, OPATs, we're hoping that catches on, and it just, we don't check who we are at the door when we leave our country, we move to a new country. Like, I am an American girl through and through, right? The values that were instilled in me in my country, and I was a Girl Scout and all of that, and that's just not going to change. But so I'm really an overseas patriot is what I am. And I think you could say the same about Canadians, or, we are who we are where we grew up. Unless you grew up in multiple countries, which some people have done that as well. But it just seemed like it resonated a lot better than the word expat.
I think it does too. Excuse me. And I think you're right. At the start, you talked about an expat or an immigrant, and people tend to look down on the term immigrant because it's the connotation there is that you've left your country because you can't live there, or something like that. Yeah. And that's not and that's not right either. It's not for anybody. That isn't the right, It's interesting, the emotion that we put behind the words.
Isn't it though? Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So I think I'll start using OPAT. I think I like that better.
Well, that sounds good.
So do you have anything in particular that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap things up?
You mentioned the life expectancy early on, the statistics, and I think you're right. It does present, it's a gift, but it does present that obligation to support ourselves and think about how we're going to live in that, this lovely long life we've been granted. And I guess one of the things that I've come across is the research that shows how you consider aging. And I catch my husband, he'll say, I'm old. And I'll say, no, you're not. Right. And I have a mentor that says we come here with a 120-year blueprint. And actually, we've heard, at least I have recently, a lot of people living well over 100, right? That's one of the fastest growing demographics there is the centenarians. But even to the 150, and I read an article about a doctor in Japan that was 118, was still practicing. Wow. I mean, not crazy, but there's the tie between purpose, right, and longevity. And so I think we need to redefine the whole idea of work and what that means, and the whole idea of retiring and that whole redefinition of it, because, retirement used to mean, of course, the end of work, but work is what oftentimes gives us purpose and meaning. So maybe we do different work. But exactly. They're so closely tied, because they also solve it solves the financial problem, and it also solves the purpose problem. And so if you can find that work that you love, and, a good friend in California, you say, do what you love and you never work a day in your life.
That's it, exactly. I was just going to say that. Yeah. And then you're not retired, but you're not working.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Perfect. So we've got a few different places that you can be found on all sorts of social media, and your opats.com as well. But claimyourdreamlifebook.com will get them to where your book is.
Yes. And all the major retailers, the links are there for your favorite bookseller.
Mm-hmm. I will make sure that all of that goes into the show notes.
And then the other place is the podcast. I just published today, episode number 75.
Excellent.
Really exciting. Yes. Of the Overseas Overseas Life Redesign podcast is up, and that until the beginning of this year was all interviews. So all kinds of folks from all walks of life that, didn't just jump on a sailboat and sail 5,000 miles to move overseas. They did it different ways. And then starting in January, I've really been doing it weekly, and I've combined my weekly live show to my private social media group with my podcast. So I'm doing the video on Mondays, and then stripping out the audio and creating those as podcast episodes. So kind of a lot of my wisdom and tips and strategies and tactics on moving overseas.
Fabulous. I'll make sure the links to that are in the show notes as well. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dawn. I've really appreciated it. Really enjoyed chatting with you.
My pleasure, Jackie.
And that's it for this episode of Beyond Retirement. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you ready to start rocking your retirement? Head on over to www.beyondretirement.ca/rocking it and sign up to plan out your own roadmap for retirement. Don't wait till it's too late.